are live, you guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I have a special guest with us today. Tell us your first and last name and where you are from, girl.
Hello, everybody. My name is Teshia Payne, and I am from Woodbridge, Virginia.
Well, I'm from Alexandria, but I'm currently residing in Woodbridge.
Okay, awesome. That's great. We are glad to have you today, Teshia, right?
Yes, Teshia. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
I always
on.
wanted to know how to say your name correctly because in my head I was always calling you Teshia. So I'm glad to know it's Teshia. Okay. Y'all, forgive us. We having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're gonna swing it and make it work. Nonetheless, exactly. And see, she's there now, so it's gonna work, y'all. Just bear with us, okay? And of course, at the end of the live, I'm gonna put her links in the description box so you guys can go and find her and find her book as well. Okay, so congratulations, you wrote a book. I'm sorry, it's probably freezing, y'all. Uh-oh. Let me see. I can't hear you. Your sound gone. I know.
What about
Okay,
now?
now it's back.
What about now?
It's back.
Okay.
Yeah, so you wrote a book.
Okay.
I don't know. You might have, huh?
So what's happening is there's
There's
rain and thunder and lightning happening in my area. So my internet is like screwed up.
Okay, see,
It's going in and out. It keeps reconnecting.
right. And I heard you clearly right then. Ain't that something? Okay. So what is the name of your book and where can we find it?
Oh my God.
So unfortunately, you guys, she's having some technical difficulties because it's raining and stuff, like she said, over in her area, and the Wi-Fi's going in and out.
So one of the things I got a question, like if I'm on the YouTube live,
I can see it on my iPad. If I hang up from my phone, that'll be better.
Do you think that maybe you could hang up from your phone and try to? Hi, we got some people that's joining. Y'all bear with us, okay? I see people joining the live. Y'all bear with us, okay? We trying to get the technical difficulties together, okay? Because either way, you can always come back in from the phone if you have to. So see if you can try. Because is there a link for you like on your iPad to join the live? From where you're looking at.
Let me see if I can
do that.
Do you see a link on your iPad? Do you see our live going on your iPad?
Yeah, I can see. So I can see.
You can see it.
I can see us talking.
I'm wondering if you can.
Can you hear me good right now?
Yeah,
can you hear me good right now?
I can. So let's just get right. Let's just let's just try to get right into it. So I understand that you had an incident with some dogs. Like, what is the story behind that?
So the story behind the dogs was I'm trying to on my iPad.
Okay.
And if so I was visiting my dad.
It was after COVID, and we had, kind of reconnected, and we decided that we wanted to spend more time together.
And so I went to visit him. We had, we did. It wasn't that we had an estranged relationship, but it talk about it was like off person where he was like, if everything is fine, then I know that we
every once in a while. So once COVID happened, we kind of, was talking every day and decided that we was going to spend more time together and get to know each
other. And so once the world decided to visit him, I went to Lynchburg, which is where he was living at the time, and I went to his house.
And I went to his house. It was his dog. We was just kind of like sitting outside. We were, vibing, getting to know each other, talking about different things. He was actually showing me how to prune a tree.
So he was growing some marijuana plants, and was so proud about and had all of and that sort of thing. And we had decided that we both, in our talking, we realized that we both. So I was like,
oh, I'm gonna come down. He was like, oh, I'm gonna show you all the tips and all of this. So I went to his house. We sat outside. There was like, we knew that it was
rain that day, and the dark clouds came over, and we were like, okay, well, let's just in the house barking. They were really big.
They were really
big dogs. He went to go into the house
to put his shoes on. So the way my dad's house was, he had his deck put on the front of his house.
So when you walked
off the deck, there was like a small gate,
and there was the front door. He had it like really close to the front door. So he went to go to open the front door, and the deck door, or the deck gate.
And the dogs came running out. So when they initially came running out, it was like, it was nothing. They weren't barking, they weren't vicious, they weren't anything. It started to rain really, really hard. He was like, come on, let's take this stuff in the house. And I was piling everything up on my
arms to like kind of carry the stuff in the house. And the dogs, I will say,
the dogs came out. I was like, very calm. I wasn't scared, but they were big dogs. So on the inside, I was like feeling like a little unsure. Like I was just uncomfortable, but I was going with the flow. I fed them treats. I said hello to them and everything. And there was this one dog, the mother. Her name was Swanee.
She walked up to me as I had my thing taken into that kind of like transfer
into my yoga pants,
my left side of my yoga pants. And I looked down,
and I looked up at my dad, and I was like, she has her teeth in my pants. And he was like, what? And so I guess on
his end, the dog had been in, people before. So he was panicked or worried or what have you. And so he was like, okay. Doors open.
Okay.
Make a run for the door.
Make a run.
So I said, okay. He shifted me, but he shifted me just a little too much, and I fell back on like a bench. And I squirmed my way up, and I just like dove for, ran for the door. And in between that happening, one of my legs got bit by the dog. Like my left leg got, she locked in.
And these were like guard dogs. And so as I'm running towards the, leaning more towards the front door, I had like half of my body in the front door and half out, and she had my legs. So she was like
pulling me away. And while all of this was happening, she's like, because now she's recognized that I'm trying to get away. And so all of the three other dogs, they came running, and they were like scurrying. So I assumed they thought that it was like attack time, pack behavior.
And so she had me locked, and I just kept, moving forward. I turned around and looked back. My dad was on the ground, but they had,
like I was all I ended up being on the left side, like they're biting me, and I'm trying to get away, and my dad is like, get to the front door,
Sorry for the lag, y'all. Tisha, turn your iPad off now since we're gonna just stick with this. I don't know because I can kind of hear the background from your iPad, and I don't want it to be echoes. Uh-oh, did we freeze? Uh-oh. Is it gonna come back? Is she gonna come back? Oh, the story was getting good.
Oh, you back?
Okay, you're back now. Okay, I think you're back. I was like, the story was getting good. Now what happened? Okay. I mean, it keeps freezing.
So as I was researching, I just didn't help.
Yeah, just keep talking. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm
Okay,
trying
you
to.
back now.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to move. I'm gonna move. I moved into a different location.
You
So
might have a better signal going on. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So,
Uh-oh.
I turned around
and I
at
looked
like
at
a
like a
small
small
moment
moment
I
I
had
had
this
this
thought
thought
of,
of like I didn't know how to fight this dog.
And what I heard in my
And what I
spirit
heard in
was, well, if you don't fight, you're gonna die because she's gonna come for your neck because these were guard dogs. So she said, so when I heard my spirit say that, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna die
today.
today.
Like I don't want to die today.
Mm-hmm.
So
So that's when I started fighting, and I looked to my left, and there was a screwdriver on the chair, and I picked the screwdriver up, and I just started banging her in her head. I was like, "Get off of me!" Just commanding, "Get off of me!"
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I want to say about that is that if you don't fight back, you're gonna die. I chose to live. Like it was in that moment
of
me
me
making
making the choice that
okay,
you're gonna fight back. And I think
also
also with
that
that being
being
said,
said,
I
I
just
was
was surrounded
surrounded
by
by
like
like
a
a
white
white
light.
light.
Like
I
I
knew
knew
at
at that
that
moment
moment
that
that
I
I
was
was
present,
present,
but
but there were other, you know,
spirit, beings, angels. Mm-hmm.
and my ancestors were like, I was almost like I remember seeing it happen, but it was also happening.
remember seeing it happen,
Right.
but
But
it
the
was
choice that
also
I made to
happening to me.
live
Right.
But the
was
choice that I made
my
to
higher
live
self and my angels
was my
putting
higher
me in
self
this
and my
place
angels
where I
putting
could,
me in this
you know,
place
fight
where
back.
I
Like
could,
I feel like they took over for me.
Wow.
I think I believe that through divine intervention there was before. And I picked it up and I just started banging her and she let me go, but she didn't let go of my
her, and
pants.
she let me go, but she
So
didn't let go
as
of my
I'm
pants.
making this
So
choice and I'm
as
fighting
I'm
this
making this
animal,
choice and I'm fighting this
I am
animal,
like,
I
no,
am
this
like,
is it. Like I'm in it.
this
And
is
she
it. Like
wouldn't
I'm
let go
in
of my
it. And
pants.
she wouldn't let go
So
of my
she still had
pants.
my pants and was
So she
pulling
still
me
had my
back
pants and was
outside.
pulling me back
And
outside.
my dad was like, close the door. You're in the house. Close the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has a lot because the tighter it was becoming to my body. And so I had to wiggle out of my yoga.
And once I
And once
wiggled
I
out of my
wiggled
yoga
out of my
pants, that's
yoga
when I
pants, that's
closed
when
the
I
door
closed
and
the
I
door
just
and I
ran
just
on the
ran on the
inside.
inside.
And I went
And
into
I
the
went into the
bathroom and I
bathroom
just
and I
started
just
calling
started
on my
calling on my
angels. I was
angels.
just
I
like,
was just
please
like,
Right.
help me.
help me. I started calling my grandmother. I started calling my sister. I need help. My sees me in the bathroom. And we then begin to call 911 and, you know, all of that. But what I want to experience that, you know, it was about choice. You know, I had to make the choice that today, that day was not going to be the day that I was going to transition on life.
Right.
So important that I, you know, made that choice to live on that day.
On that day. And that is
kind of what
it's kind of what opened me up to my emotional health and well-being journey.
Okay.
As a result, I suffer from
Yeah.
PTSD. And I still,
with that sometimes.
Yeah.
But my whole like I don't even a dog attack or accident or anything. There were so many things about it that was the experience
spiritual
that was
in
spiritual
nature
in nature
to me.
Yeah.
I was very, prior to this situation happening, I had performed a Merkaba initiation ritual where I really wanted
inner balance.
Mhm.
I was very angry and enraged in who I am. Relationship that
that I have really poured into this person who I thought was going to be my forever person. So that ended up in betrayal.
And so I had a lot of anger and rage in me.
Right.
And one people about when she initially grabbed my pants and I looked down and her eyes were literally looking up at me as if to say like, okay.
Like there was something very familiar about her eyes. And so for me, it was a completely
spiritual experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Like, wow. That would definitely traumatize me. So
I mean, it was like the anger immediately left me. I got from
they moved me into this.
Huh?
Say that again.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like, and I said, yeah, that's a traumatizing thing. That would definitely traumatize me. Something like that.
Yeah. Very much so. I understand before. I don't call it an attack or anything like that. I call it an activation.
Right.
Because what it activated in me was my ability to know that I can absolutely call on my higher self, my angels, my God, to come and protect me. It offered me this out of body experience that I wasn't even
sure that I believed in.
Yeah. I love the way you took that experience and turned it into a spiritual thing.
Yeah. A very important person. That's the best way that I can describe it.
That's the best way that I can describe it. Because it was like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I had an experience like the day that I was supposed to,
like the next day I was supposed to get out of the hospital. I had a nightmare. So what woke me up was that the dog was coming for my nap, which is in terms of in the moment when my higher self was like, "You're gonna die if you don't fight back," you know. And when I had that nightmare, I woke up, but my heart was racing.
Yeah.
It was so.
I was just fear. It was just
wow.
So they had to like, they were just like, was a nurse that came in.
So I literally was laying there. So one of the things that I do also is I listen to binaural beats, and I listen to like a lot of meditation music. So and I knew that
lavender was an essential oil that was very calming for me. Like my body, like literally when I smell lavender, it just goes into like almost a meditative state.
Right.
So I was laying there, and on my heart, I was like, dang, I wish I had some lavender because I knew that it would calm me down.
Put it on my pressure points and that sort of thing. And a nurse walked in. And she's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I just had a nightmare." And she was like, And I was like, and I kind of like had my
back to her. And I was talking to her, and she was talking to me, very soft and everything. She's like, "Oh," she said, "Dang, I wish I had some lavender."
And I just looked up at her, and all I see is just like just white. I mean, it was hospital lights, but it was very ethereal, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I just looked at her and she said, "Oh, dang." She said, "Oh, you know what? I do have some." She said, "I'll be right back." She went to her purse. She had this in her own personal.
Possession. Her
Wow.
purse. She told
Mm-hmm.
me she took the lavender out, put it on some gauze, gave it to me, and I put it on my pressure points, and I
Immediately calmed
immediately
down.
calmed down.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in August, I had, released my book. And while I was in the hospital, my dad was just passing books out. People were coming to my hospital room.
Asking me for autographs, because
Yeah.
of, he had just say, hey, you're taken care of, a self-published author, so make sure you do a good job. It was just spiritual.
Wow.
It was just spiritual. It was just very,
It brought us
Yeah.
closer.
I had decided to go back and forth because I had trauma. I had to have emergency trauma surgery.
Mm.
And I
Wow.
chose to go back to those doctors who treated me to take care of my dad was like, he treated me. I was his little girl. He going at every single turn. We just built. We developed that closeness of a relationship. In that year, it wasn't even a year. It was probably like 5-6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Then my dad found out that he had stage cancer, and he didn't make it to the year anniversary of the dog activation. And so, and that was that.
Like,
wow.
Ever since he transitioned, his birthday was 12. It was December 12th. Ever since he transitioned, every day I see 12 on the in some way.
Or I'll see, like, he had a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how
when
I
I see
know
12,
that it's him, because he's like making a joke to make sure I'm paying attention. And I tie all of that to the work that I do on myself.
I'll go back a little bit.
When I decided,
like, I've always wanted to be like an author. Like, I've always been a writer. I've always like
put myself in a corner,
had a journal.
Mm-hmm.
When I was pissed off as a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
I would get a 3-subject notebook and just start writing and doing things like that. So
Yeah.
one of my
writing and doing things like that. So one of my desires as an adult was to always write a book.
Once I started my
And
healing journey,
once I started my healing journey, things just came to me. And one day I was cleaning up my room, looking in my journals, and that became my book because I knew I
didn't know what about.
Right. So speaking of, okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about that. We're gonna talk a little bit about your book in just a.
We had to write a love letter to ourselves.
Oh, I know it's lagging, so she probably won't hear me yet. She'll hear me in a second. So speaking on that, right? Speaking on that, before we get to your book and everything, because we're gonna get to that. How are you working through overcoming the grief of losing your father? And then once we get to that question, then I want to know your insight on what emotional health means to you, okay?
So,
it's breaking up a little
bit.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
I moved it.
Okay. Well, we making it work. Okay. So I asked, like, how did you overcome the grief of losing your father, or are you still working on that? And then after that, I want to know more about your understanding of what emotional health is.
Okay.
I
said to one of my friends the other day.
My cousin, she recently lost one of her family close, like unexpected.
Was, like
And I was
unexpected.
saying to her that you will
And
never
I was
get
saying to her
over
that you will never get
losing
over
someone, so
losing someone,
deeply in
so
your heart.
deeply
But
in
you
your
learn
heart.
to cope.
But
And
you
what you
learn to
learn to
cope.
do
And
is
what you
you
learn
learn
to
to
do
deal with
is you
your
learn to
feelings.
deal with your
Whether
feelings.
it's, the
Whether
five
it's,
stages
the
of
5 stages
grief, which
of
is
grief,
anger,
which is
bargaining,
anger, bargaining,
I don't know all of
I don't
them,
know
but
all of them,
you
but
go through the phases of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to cope with the people that got to this place that felt like an ending. But for me, it was a new beginning because I was starting to have that relationship with my father
Right.
that I've
So
always
for
wanted.
me,
And
I
so for me,
grieve the
I
fact that
grieve the fact
I
that
don't get to continue that
Yeah.
in the physical.
in the
Mhm.
physical.
And so
And
I have
so
days
I have
where I
days
miss
where I
him
miss him.
because now I have this relationship with him where I can talk to him about any and everything, where I didn't think that
I didn't grow up thinking that I could do that. So the grief comes in that area when I think about him, wanting to hug him, wanting to him. There was a certain way that when I would call and he would pick up the phone, he would be like, "Hey, baby, I miss, hearing him say that." So, but I allow myself my feelings no matter where I'm at. If I have to excuse myself, I excuse myself. And that's what part of what I believe emotional health is allowing yourself to feel your feelings. So
Yes.
one thing I want to say too is that emotional health and mental health are, they share that fine line.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the mental health, we're dealing about, the mind.
Yeah.
And so what I want people emotional health is you have to tap into your feelings.
Yeah.
I wish that I could change the narrative about, or I will work change the narrative of people not your emotions aren't your friends.
Your friends.
Your
Your
emotions
emotions
are
are
fleeting.
fleeting.
Your
Your
emotions
emotions
are
are
this.
this. Your
They come
feelings,
and go.
they come and go.
Even
Even
if
if your
your
feelings
feelings
come and
you
go,
still
you
need
still need to
to
acknowledge.
acknowledge those feelings. You have to
Yes.
accept those feelings
Mm-hmm.
because then you're moving into a space where it's accepted to see your heart space.
Right.
You aren't tapped into your emotions
Tap
and your
into your
feelings.
emotions
You're
and your
not tapped
feelings.
into your
You're
heart.
not tapped into your
Right.
heart.
And your heart chakra.
And your heart chakra, that's
it's part of who we
it's
are.
part of who we are. It's a part of our inner man. I don't care what spiritual belief, what religious belief you believe in, or anything like that. You have to tap into your feelings
know
and
what they are,
Mm-hmm.
and know what you are dealing with within your own self. One of the things that I learned about myself in therapy,
just from after
the
the
dog
dog
activation
activation and
and
everything
everything
was
was
that
that
I
I
didn't
didn't
know
know
my
my
own
own
feelings,
feelings.
because a
Right.
lot of times as a child I had to ignore those things, and that looks like stop crying. You were talking back, so don't cry because you were bad, or you did this and you weren't supposed.
So now you're in trouble. So don't cry. But I had a right to cry
The fact that I
because
got in
I
trouble,
needed to feel those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I
So as
needed
an adult, I didn't know my own
And so
feelings.
as an
One of the
adult, I
things that
didn't know
popped
my
up
own
for me,
feelings. One of the
like
things that
with
popped up for me,
my emotional
like
health
with,
and
my
understanding
emotional
me, was
health
that I
and
didn't even know
understanding me, was
what
that
my
I didn't
feelings
even
are.
know what my
Mm.
feelings are.
Mm.
Happy,
Were
sad, glad,
happy,
mad.
sad,
That's what
glad,
the
mad.
happy
That's what
face,
the
the
happy
yellow
face,
face,
the
the
yellow
green face,
face,
the
the
red
green
face.
face.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we grow up, and that's what they teach us.
Right.
But I had to learn that fear, part of
A
anger.
part of anger.
That's
an
an
anger response.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
I
I had to learn that sometimes when you are confused, that can be considered that the root of that is anger,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know. And so I was walking
walking
around with all of these emotions and feelings that
that
I
I
didn't
didn't
even
even
understand
understand
about
about myself
myself
or
or
what
what
they
they were.
were and why.
Mm-hmm.
So most what emotional health will actually to be wrong with yourself about how, even if you are upset and angry and enraged about something that is so minute and small,
Something that is
you have
so
to
minute and
acknowledge
small,
that feeling,
you
or
have
else
to
you're going to
acknowledge that
react
feeling, or else you're going to
in a
react
way that you're going to
in a
regret
way that
later.
you're going to
Yeah.
regret
So
later.
you are,
And so if
for me,
you are,
emotional health
for
is
me,
always
emotional
being
health
true
is always
to my feelings and my emotions and
So, what are some ways that like you can tell if someone
what
isn't
I
emotionally healthy?
see tying it to what that makes my mental get my depression.
That's where depression,
That's where it
that's
really
where it really
helped me to
helps
understand
me
as
to
a child.
understand.
I
As
was
a
very
child, I was very
sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
sensitive.
So
It's a little bit of a lag.
I lead with my emotion need to center me. Then I can check myself
Mm-hmm.
instead of allowing somebody else to check me or me or you acting in this way or that
I
way.
now
I
know
now
myself
know
enough
myself enough
emotionally to
emotionally
say,
to
well,
say, well,
that's not who I
that's not
am,
who I
so I'm
am.
not going
So
to
I'm
allow
not
you
going
to
to allow you
project
to
that on
project
me.
that on me.
Whereas
Right.
before,
Whereas
I would
before,
take
I would take what people say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mad about this? Well, maybe I know myself knew
the
about the character and the person that I was.
Right.
So
So
that
that
experience really
experience
helped
really
me
helped me
to get
to
to know
get to
me,
know
and
me,
I
and
think
I think
for a very
for a
long
very long
time,
time,
I said
I
that grief
said that
was my
grief
best
was my
friend.
best friend.
Mm.
Because
Because
why? I
why?
knew how
I
to
knew how to
maneuver grief.
maneuver grief.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that if I was sad, that what was gonna. I knew how to sit in sadness.
Right.
Called grief my best friend because I knew how to. I knew how to fake it. I knew how to
I knew
mask
how to
it. I
mask
knew
it.
how to
I knew
act
how to
like it
act
wasn't
like it wasn't
there.
there.
And for
And
me,
for me, it wasn't.
it
It
wasn't
was
just a
just a
negative way
negative
that
way
I
that
was
I was
looking
looking
at
at
grief.
grief.
To
To
whereas
whereas
now
now
I
I
look
look
at
at
grief
grief
as
as
a
a
friend
friend.
that is telling me, telling my body that
Something is
something
up.
has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Trigger of activation
That's
of
a
something
trigger
that you
about
need to
something
go
else, or an
inward and you need
activation
to deal
of
with
something
within
that you need to
yourself.
go inward
Right.
and you need
And
to
so
deal
that's
with
how I
within
deal with
yourself.
grief.
So
And
tell
so
me,
that's how I deal with grief.
what are the ways, like what are the signs you think that people give that shows that they're not emotionally healthy or that there's something that they need to work on emotionally?
This
Uh-oh, is it? It'll catch up in a minute, y'all. Uh-oh, she back?
I'm
She
back.
went out.
Can you hear me?
Okay, you back. You
Yes. I'm
back.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to
It's
move
okay.
Trying to
into a
move
different
into
a different
a different
location.
location.
Yeah, we working it out. We working it out somehow.
I'm moving right by the internet.
Okay.
Connection. Okay.
So what was your
So what was
question
your
again? I'm
question again?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And we love hearing you talk. I mean, I can't wait to hear more about this book. But I want to say, yeah, I'm serious. You're great at storytelling. So tell me, what are some of the signs or what are some of the things where you can tell if one is emotionally unhealthy? What are the signs of being emotionally unhealthy?
For
For
me,
me,
the signs
the
for me
signs for me
was
was
just taking
just
something
taking
and
something
running
and
with it,
running
like
with it, like
reacting to
reacting
something
to
that I
something
didn't
that I
like
didn't
instead
like
of
instead of
thinking
thinking
um
um,
that
that
thinking about
thinking
what
about what
maybe somebody
maybe
else is
somebody else
going
is
through
going through
and tying
and
it.
tying
It's
it.
kind of, I
It's
don't want
kind
to
of
call
I
it
don't want to call it
selfishness, but
selfishness, but
Mm-hmm.
when we think that
when we
everything
think
is
that
about
everything
us.
is about us,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sometimes people treat us a certain type of way that
To
has
do with
nothing to
us.
do with us.
Right.
That,
That
be,
being
that's one of the
that's one
main
of the
things,
main
like
things, like reacting to something
that really
that
has nothing
really
to
has
do with
nothing to
you.
do with you.
Trying to take
Trying to
over
take
somebody
over somebody
else's
else's
problem,
problem.
Yeah.
trying to fix
Trying to fix
everything,
everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
needing
Needing
validation,
validation.
needing
Needing
somebody,
somebody,
asking
asking. That's like me calling your readings and things
things
like
like
that.
that.
Somebody that's always calling you and asking you, well, what should I do about this? Can you read
Cards,
cards?
can you
Can you
give me
give
a
me a
reading
reading
about
about
this?
this?
Can you
Can you
give me a
give me a
reading
reading
about
about
that?
that?
They
They
want
want
somebody
somebody
to
to
tell
tell
them
them
who they
who
are
they
or what
are
they're
or what
doing
they
or
do
why they
or
should
why
do
they should
something
do
instead of
something
really
instead of
sitting
really
with
sitting with
themselves.
themselves.
People who don't
Right.
want
People
to
who
sit
don't
with
want to sit with
themselves
themselves
and really,
and really,
how
people,
people
you know
used
how
to
people
say,
used to say,
if people who
if people who talk to themselves are crazy. Well, if you're not having a conversation with yourself, you don't know yourself.
You
You
gotta
know what I'm
talk to
saying?
yourself.
So for
So
Mm-hmm.
me,
for
it's
me,
always
it's always
focusing on the
focusing on the
external.
external.
Mm-hmm.
In my book,
In
that's
my
one of the
book, that's
things that
one of
I
the
say
things
the
that I say.
external
The external
validation will never
validation
be
will
the
never be
reward
the
for
reward for
anything that you
anything that
seek
you
out
seek
or
out or
desire.
desire.
So if it's
So if
always
Mm-hmm.
it's
about an
always about an
external
external
reward, then
reward,
you're
then
not
you're
doing
not
anything
doing
inward
anything
to
inward
even
to
know.
even
And
know.
that's why
And
a lot
that's
of
why a
times
lot of times
people
people
go
go
after,
after.
I will say
I
this,
will
let
say
me
this. Let me
reframe what I'm
reframe what
saying.
I'm saying.
For me,
For me,
I
I
wanted to be an
wanted to be an
entrepreneur
entrepreneur. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that
because
because I was looking
outward,
outward,
trying to
trying
find
Mm-hmm.
to find
out who
find
I
out who
was.
I was.
And
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes I would
sometimes I would
manifest these
manifest
things,
these
become an
things, become an
entrepreneur, write
entrepreneur,
my
write
book,
my
do
book,
this, do
do
that.
this, do
But
that.
once I
But once
accomplished
I
those
accomplished
things,
those things,
there was no
there was no
fulfillment.
fulfillment.
But that was
But
because I
that was
wasn't
because
doing it
I
for
wasn't
me.
doing
I
it
was
for me.
trying
I
to
was
get
trying
this
to get
validation or
validation or
acceptance
acceptance
from
from
something or
something
someone
or
that was
someone that
outside of
was
me.
outside of me.
Right.
And so for me, I believe that that's emotionally unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that can
You
show
can
up.
be present, but also be an avoidant,
Mm-hmm.
meaning I'm here, but I'm
Right.
not going to deal with anything that you're saying because I don't want to deal with my emotions about that.
Mm.
Whereas someone who hears what you're saying and can and say and talk to you about you, and then you not get upset about that, but you really take to heart what they're saying and say, okay, well maybe I did, or maybe them telling me
Is
is
something that
something that
I need to
I
pay
need
attention
to pay
to and
attention to
really,
and really,
go inward
go
and
inward
meditate
and
about on
meditate
my
about
own.
on my own.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm
You
saying?
know what I'm
Because
saying? Because
obviously,
Yeah.
obviously,
you don't
you
take
don't
everything
take
that somebody's
everything that
saying because
somebody's saying
people
because
really
people
will
really
project
will
their
project their
whatever onto
whatever
you.
onto you.
But you do
But
owe
you do
yourself,
owe
or
yourself,
I owe
or I owe
myself a
myself
service
a
of
service of
sitting with
sitting
that
with
and,
that
You
asking
do.
and
myself,
asking
well, how
myself,
does that
well,
make
how
you
does that
feel
make you
knowing
feel
that that's
knowing that
how
that's
this
Yes.
how
person
this
outside
person
of you?
outside of you?
Because a lot
Because
of
a
times
lot of
I would
times
show
I
up
would
with
show
a
up
mask
with a
on,
mask on,
thinking
Mm-hmm.
that, oh,
thinking
I'm
that,
going to
oh,
show
I'm
up
going to
this
show
way
up
and
this
then
way,
I would
and
get
then I would
treated a
get
different
treated a
way, and
different
I
way,
was
and I
stuck
was stuck
because I couldn't
because I couldn't
understand why
understand why
people weren't
people weren't
responding to me
responding
in the
to
way
me
that
in
I
the way that
was
I
showing
was
up,
showing up,
but I
Right.
wasn't
but I
being
wasn't
real.
being real.
I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
being
I
real with
wasn't being real
myself,
with
and I was
myself,
wearing
and
a
Yeah.
I was
mask.
wearing a mask.
So,
Yeah.
So,
um,
um,
just just
you know,
when we
just
lie
when
to
we lie to
ourselves,
ourselves,
and
Mm-hmm.
and
one of the best
one of the
things that
best
we can
things that
do
we
is
can do
really
is
be
really be
completely raw
completely raw
and
and
uncut with
uncut with
ourselves and call
ourselves and call
ourselves out on
ourselves
our
out
own
on our own
BS.
BS.
And that's what I
Yes.
That's
did,
what I did.
and that's what I
Right.
That's
do.
what I
That's
do.
kind of
That's
like
kind of
the
like
way I
the
live
way
my
I
life
live my
now.
life now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for
So
me. That's what
that's what
emotional health
emotional health
means for me.
means
I'm
for me. I'm
currently
currently
writing
writing
a book
a book
on
on
I call it
I call it
emotional
emotional
engineering.
engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about acceptance. It's about
It's
allowance.
about
It's about it's about
healing. It's
healing.
about
It's about
acknowledge,
acknowledge,
just who you
just who you
are and the
are
person
and
that
the
you
person that you
are.
are,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
and it's just
navigating those
navigating
things,
those things.
um,
Yes.
knowing when
Knowing when
you're seeking
you're seeking
validation and
validation and
appreciation, when you
appreciation,
don't
when
need
you
it,
don't
when
need
you
it, when you
knowing how
knowing
to
how to
validate
validate
yourself in
yourself in
certain
certain
circumstances when you
circumstances when
are
you
being
are
triggered
being
or
triggered
activated,
or activated in that thing. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to use the word trigger
because it
because
feels so
it feels so
negative. But
negative,
most,
Mm-hmm.
but most
people are
people are
familiar with
familiar
when
with
you use the
when you
word
use the
trigger,
word
they have a
trigger, they
better
have a better
understanding of
understanding
what you
of what
mean
you
and how
mean and
you,
how
are
are
connecting and
connecting
relating
and
to them.
relating to them.
But I
Mm-hmm.
like to
But I
say
like to say
activation
activation
because
because
for
for
me,
me,
when
when
something
something
triggers
triggers
me,
me,
it
it
activates
activates
within me
within
a
me
place that
a
I need
place
to
that
go
I
within
need to go within
myself to
myself
deal with
to
it.
deal with
So
it.
when I
So
know
when
Yes.
I'm
I
in a
know I'm in
mood
a
or
mood or
I'm in a
I'm in a
feeling,
feeling,
then I'm not
then
going to
I'm
be
not
around
going to be
other
around
people and
other people and
transfer that
transfer
energy
that
onto
energy
them.
onto them.
Yes.
That's
That's
emotional health and
emotional
wellness.
health and
That's
wellness.
being
That's
Mm-hmm.
being
emotionally healthy.
emotionally healthy.
Dealing
Yes.
with,
Dealing with,
and having
and having
conversations about the
conversations
hard
about the
stuff
hard stuff
that you really
that
Mm-hmm.
don't
you
want to
really
talk
don't want to
about.
talk about.
You know,
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things
one of
that
the
in my
things that in my
therapy,
therapy,
I can't
I
quite
can't quite
remember
remember
exactly what we were
exactly what
talking
we were
about, but
talking
she
about, but she
gave me this
gave me this,
life
life
lesson that
lesson
was,
that was,
it's called,
it's called,
reframing, and they talk
reframing.
about
They
it
talk
a lot
about
in
it a lot
therapy.
in therapy.
But she asked me a
She asked me
question,
a
and I was telling her, she asked me, how did it make me feel? And I said, oh, it makes me feel like such and such. And she goes, well, that was a thought. And I was like, oh. I said, well, I guess it made me feel like such and such. And she said, well, that's another thought. That's not a feeling. And I was like, huh? And she was just like, and then I was just like, well, I guess I don't know how
And that's where she wanted me to go. And from that, she explained to me that I did not know my emotions. I did not know my feelings.
Wow.
It's called the feelings wheel.
Wow.
I'm confused in, what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling. I'll go to my feelings wheel and I'll look at my feelings wheel and I'll search for that word that helps me connect with how I'm feeling. And then I'll go from there in dealing with myself and meditating and praying about the situation or looking for insight as to how I can deal with that. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I love that. You said so much. I'm like, wow. I love it.
I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get it all in before the
right. Well, we,
internet
while we got a good connection going on, I'm like, wow, that was really good, girl. Okay, like write this book out. I can't wait till you finish writing your other book. But that's great. Okay. So as far as the book, okay, that was awesome because it's like I was gonna say some things, but I'm like, you touched on exactly what I was gonna, say, especially as far as like emotional health, because we have to tune into how we feel about certain things. If you want to be emotionally healthy, you have to acknowledge your feelings. And sometimes our feelings do lie to us. And that's why it's so important for us to tap into the feeling. Like, is this really what this is that's going on around me? Is this really what's being projected towards me? Is this a healthy perspective and way to understand or feel what's going on? But we can go, girl, I can tell you about some emotion. Are you a Cancer? Because I think, aren't you a Cancer? So we both Cancer, so we know a little something about emotions. Okay.
Exactly. I think also that's why I get so like, I'll just use the word pissed off when I hear people like on social media and they talk about don't trust your emotions, don't trust this. No, you trust your emotions even to the point where you know that they are lying to you because they are trying to activate you and make you aware.
Yes.
And so if you aren't tapped in and tuned in, you don't know that they're lying.
Right. Because sometimes I feel like emotions is also how we react to things. And so in order to be emotionally healthy, you have to tune into what you're feeling. You can actually change your perspective or feeling to a better, more healthier reaction when someone does something or says something. Reactions, we usually react from what we feel about what's being said or what's being done. And so maturity and healthy emotional understanding is tuning into what you're feeling and reacting from a more better, healthier perspective. Yeah.
So the word that I like to use is, so of course I'm a writer, so I'm a wordsmith. So instead of reacting,
I'm a process. I will say, I need to process.
Right.
And so when I feel myself wanting to react, I will cut myself off. No, don't do it. Wait, think about it. And it takes conscious effort. You have to know.
It really does.
But you also have to admit that you are a reactor. Like, I had to get to a place where I had to say, okay, I could have reacted better. And again, in therapy, one of the things that my therapist, she helped me to reframe that when it's time to have a conversation with somebody or have a conversation with yourself, it's just a conversation. Don't feel like you got to go to war or don't feel like you got to defend your honor or yourself. Just, you're having this conversation. So sometimes when I have to sit myself down and have a conversation with myself, I'm like, I'm very compassionate. I'm very understanding. Like, okay, you have every right to feel the way that you're feeling. Let's talk about why. And usually when I'm like, supporting others, I'll say, your feelings are valid. And so we can't walk around telling people that their feelings are valid, but then try to dismiss the way that they respond or the way that they try to work it out. Because a lot of people don't know that their reaction is able to be processed in a different way.
Yes, it is. Yes, and that's what I had to learn about my feelings and emotions, is that just because I feel a certain way doesn't mean I have to react a certain way
Yep.
in regards to that. So sometimes, but that takes conscious effort of processing, like you said. You have to talk to yourself. You got to think through those emotions. You got to talk through that. And that's what you're
Yep.
right. People tell us, oh, you can't talk to yourself. No, you need to talk to yourself. You
Yeah.
need to
You need to talk
process.
to yourself and allow
Yes.
yourself to answer. You have to align with the Holy Spirit and know that the Holy Spirit is talking back to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Exactly.
Not just some, devil out here trying to manipulate you. Because a lot of us, we need to do shadow work. It's a
Yes.
real thing.
It sure is. It sure is.
You know,
And it
and
takes
it's the
that.
truth of who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love this. So so what's something that people can look forward to experiencing or understanding when it comes to your book, the book that you already have out? What can people look forward to in reading your book?
That you're gonna have experiences
Elevate
that
you.
elevate you.
Mm-hmm.
Every experience that we go through is one that is going to work for our highest good and going to elevate us. It
Mm-hmm.
even and choice is so important. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you have to be you have to be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody wants to be in control. You have to be in control of your choices.
Yes.
Because
Woo!
if you're not in control of your
Woo!
choices, then you're reacting, right?
Woo! You just said something then, sis.
So that's
Yes.
and a lot of my choices in my book, it will show that a lot of my choices led to the experiences that I had, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then also those choices led me to my evolution
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of
And all
the
of that is in
person
your
that you're
book.
talking to today. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because it talks about so it's called love consciousness. And what
Uh-huh.
I
Love
mean
that
by that
title.
is being conscious of love is all around us. Even in our
Yes.
most triggered or activated states, love is present. When love is present, everything else falls away. That's
Right.
the consciousness of what love is. It's a covenant. And what a
I love
covenant
it.
is it's something that we all agree to. When you came to this life and decided that you wanted to take this journey, you made a covenant with the universe. You made a covenant with God that you were going to find love. It was going to find you. You were going to return back to me, right? So that's what. And so for me, love consciousness, using difficulties and differences to heal relationships is what I went through in order to
Yeah.
get to my own self-love. I didn't take
Wow.
those differences. I didn't take those difficulties and say that they shouldn't have happened. I
Right.
chose to, talk about why they happened and what I learned from them happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it really taps into, the person that I was. I was very real. I was very raw.
Mm-hmm.
In my childhood, there were times where I felt invisible. I was in the room, middle of the room, and nobody asked me. I have experiences where I just felt like I was dismissed. So these
Mm-hmm.
kind of things caused me to get into relationships where I needed to feel validated, where, oh, if I could just love this person back to health, or I could love them so much that they were, but what I didn't understand was
Mm-hmm.
me not walking in a healthy emotional state. I was only loving out of the wound itself. And so it was
Yes.
never going to work because it was it was almost like it was a give and take. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
felt like, oh, I just want somebody to love me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, from a state of needing somebody outside to love, somebody outside of myself to love me, that means that everything that I'm building on this person that could just pick up and walk or decide that they want to be with somebody else the next morning, I'm giving all of that away to them. And I'm
Yeah.
giving them this power and control over me.
Wow.
And so
Mhm.
you don't end up in healthy relationships as a result of that. Child, I
Yeah.
mean, just being who I would just get mad over the most simplest of things of not getting my way. Because my little girl, like my 12-year-old self, was running my relationships. So
Mhm.
every relationship, and it had a lot to do with me not being as close to my father as I wanted to. And
Right.
then also kind of feeling like my mom didn't understand like my emotional space. I feel like
Yeah.
when my mom was pregnant with me, all of her emotions transformed into me, and I got them
Mhm.
all. And so
Mm.
her emotions don't, like, she's not a, she doesn't like easily cry like I do. For me, I
Yeah.
cry to release or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If my mom is crying, she's such a strong, woman. But if she's
Mhm.
crying, it's because there is a loss,
Yeah.
or something that she can't physically fix, or something like that. And so,
Mhm.
but that's the generation that they come from, and
Yep.
that sort of thing. So that's how
Right.
they were raised. But I realized as an adult, like even with, me being 45 years old, as a child, I needed more emotional sensitivity to me.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I didn't grow up that way. And
Right.
so I had
Same.
to learn how to give that to my inner child,
Yes,
my
ma'am.
as an adult. I had to
Yes.
and so I have a chapter that's called Reparenting Myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have a chapter that talks about twin flame, which was the
Mhm.
best and worst relationship that but it elevated me.
Mhm.
I have a
Mhm.
chapter that talks about, who is she? Just talking about
Mhm.
me and my name, and
Mhm.
what that means, and being named after my sister. And so it's just a lot of things that I found out about myself, um, that led me to, I did love myself. I just didn't have the words at the time to write that love letter from that in
Mhm.
that coaching session that I had, but it was the most rewarding. And so for me, I want people to, when they do read my book, that they realize that they walk with me through the stages that I really find my self-love. And so my book,
Mhm.
even though it talks about using difficulties and differences to heal relationships, it was
Mhm.
all of the relationships that I've been with, that I've been in, even to like people that I worked with, and developed those little small relationships that were
Mhm.
meaningful.
Mhm.
But it helped me to get to a place of self-love within myself, and
Yeah.
how I might have reacted or how I could have done differently. And the last chapter of my book is called Self-Love, and so it just talks about how I came to acceptance of myself. And I still work through a lot of things, but now it's rewarding to
Mhm.
know that, girl, you tripping over that, you need to go, meditate. You know what I'm saying? I look forward
Yes.
to, those
Mhm.
moments, instead of, trying to avoid them. I didn't even
Right.
know that I was like this avoidant person,
Mhm. Mhm.
running from things
Right.
and thinking that, um, but when I do know now that when I feel emotionally unsafe, I remove myself. I
Right.
did not have that power over myself before, until I was given permission to. And how that would happen was, my therapist was like, Tisha, when you feel unsafe, remove yourself. You don't have to stay in that space. And
Sure
so that
don't.
was so empowering for me. And so
Right.
now I don't walk away from a place of being fearful or scared. I walk away with a power over me, and honoring my emotional body to
Mhm.
move into a safe space that fits for
Right.
me, you
Yeah.
know.
So it's some of that in your book, what you've talking about here.
Hmm.
Okay, because I can't wait. I'm definitely gonna get the book. And so we're getting ready to end our live. This
Hmm.
has been wonderful.
It,
It got clearer at the end, but
I
whatever will be. I really want to read your book. So when we finish this live, make sure you give me the link. I
know.
don't know, I
Okay.
may already have it,
Okay.
but excuse me, I'll check and see.
Okay.
But y'all get her book because wow, great speaker, great storyteller, and
Thank you
I
so
can't
much.
wait for your next book as well because I love your insights. Okay, like
Thank
so
you.
I'm definitely gonna get your book so I can read your stories. And is the story about the dog attacking everything in that book as well?
No, that's going to end up.
Oh,
So that's going to end up being in another book because I have so many like spiritual insights that came with that.
mm-hmm.
So that is going to be a book about. It's going to be titled Cosmic Activation. And as I go back and I think about a lot of things that I've gone through, it activated a different version of me. And so that's where that's going to be in a chapter in that book.
Well, keep on writing because I love it. And
Thank you.
girl, you are going somewhere. So
Thank
don't you dare stop,
I
okay?
won't. I
All
won't.
right.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much
much.
for joining this live, you
Thank you for
guys.
having
And
me.
of course, it's been a pleasure.
We got to do this
Wow.
again.
Yes, we definitely should. Hopefully with better connection because wow, like
Absolutely.
that story about the dog really had me emotional. I'm like, oh my God. It's funny how we can take certain things and it can turn into something profound. You
Yes.
know, something that
Yes.
seems like it could be so simple or small, even though a dog attack is not simple or
It's
small.
not.
But
It
just
wasn't.
the way that it helped to elevate you
Yes.
spiritually.
Yes.
That was an awesome
Yes.
story. That was an awesome story.
It's also one of those things that it makes you a believer of everything happening for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I would have never guessed that I would have listen, I've never been in a fight in my life. I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about physical fight with another human being or anything else. Um I didn't know that I knew how to fight back in
Wow.
that kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I knew I would know how to protect myself in
Mm-hmm.
such a vicious way. You know what I'm saying? And so it made
Yeah.
me it also instilled in me this kind of warrior, um,
Yeah.
just spiritual warrior
And
that
to think that that was a moment where you could have lost your life.
mhm.
And you said, no, I'm going to live.
Yes, I was not ready to die. I was not ready to die, and because I knew that I hadn't fulfilled my purpose.
Right. That was just a great story.
Yeah, and another thing that I want to say, like I was in the middle of getting a reading done because I used to get my readings done yearly by this gentleman that lives here in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was giving me it was a full birth chart reading. And in the middle of the reading, he told me that I was going to be writing something that was going to help change lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was planning to, it was probably like a month before I was planning to release my book. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had my shirt on. I have some shirts that I, purchased that because I say don't just love because even if you have what you consider a bad experience of love, it's going to elevate you in some way, shape, or
Yes,
form.
ma'am.
You know.
Yes, ma'am.
So it was
Mm-hmm.
just amazing that he told me that and it allowed me to know that I was right on the right path and in the right space. I was amazed. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
many of your readings have been so spot on that, you know, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I have one that's pinned in my email that I constantly go back to and I listen to because
Wow.
that the person that I got that reading about, we
Mm-hmm.
still communicate. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I will say I probably listened to it maybe in January of this year. You gave it to me in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's still relevant today.
Wow. Yeah, I
So
get that a lot sometimes from some of my clients. They come back and they tell me, like, you remember that reading you did that time? it actually came to it actually happened.
yes,
It's still relevant. I'm
yes,
like,
still
Yes,
relevant.
glory to God.
Yes,
Glory to
still
God.
relevant. And so
Mhm.
I just appreciate you. I appreciate your work. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you honoring your spirit. I appreciate you honoring your purpose,
Thank you.
walking in it, because I know it doesn't look like what everybody thinks that, everybody's
Yes,
journey is
ma'am.
supposed to be
I'm a
like.
Scorpio rising with Uranus in the first, so
Yeah, yeah,
different.
you got to be out there doing it, because the people need
Hmm.
to know and they need to hear. And that's why I
Yes.
do what I do. I have so many, like, even with my
And I'm so
experience with
proud of
my,
you. I'm so
yeah,
proud of you.
thank you
Hmm.
so much. I'm proud of
Hmm.
you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
Thank you
Hmm.
so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I probably would have never done this a couple of years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
Being on YouTube, being on live, talking, it would have never been me. But
And if you
now,
have a YouTube channel, you should definitely start talking on your YouTube channel.
okay, I
You
will.
definitely should.
I
Mm-hmm.
will.
You
I used
definitely
to like
should.
get into my head about
Because
it.
you're a speaker. You're a great speaker.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much. I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
I probably will call you for some tips. How about that?
You can.
Okay.
You can. You definitely can. I don't mind. I don't mind
Okay.
giving tips. I'm always giving people tips and advice and everything. So
Thank you
I don't
so
mind.
much.
Hmm. So we're gonna end this live, you guys. Thank you
Okay.
so much for watching. And
Yes.
Teshia, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Tisha, I'll be in touch
Okay.
because I do want to make sure I have everything I need in order to put in the description box so people can find your book.
Okay.
Possibly follow you on social media if you would like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That would be great. Follow me.
Okay,
I
you
got a
guys.
lot of stuff coming online. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mm. Okay. All right.
All
Thank
right.
you guys, and
Okay.
talk to you next time, y'all.
Okay. Thank you. Talk to you next
You're
time. Bye
welcome.
bye.
Bye.